The Rock. 99.9 KISW. Rockaholics helping rockaholics. This is Group Therapy with BJ Shea.
And Group Therapy is brought to you by Goldberg Jones. And if you got a problem or dilemma, you know what you got to do. Just send me a message. You can do it on Facebook, searching for KISW. Also on Twitter, at 999KISW. And you can also send us a tweet, I should say a text, rather, at 77999. And an email, bj@KISW.com. Just put Group Therapy in the subject line. And if you got a real problem, you should always consult a professional, no doubt about it. Today, though, a very special edition of Group Therapy, Steve.
It's a special edition of Group Therapy. It's kind of like Different Strokes when they have those special moments.
On a special Group Therapy.
We've got the man himself, Rick Jones from Goldberg Jones in the house, BJ.
It's Rick Jones!
Hey, guys.
Rick, it's good to have you in, man. Every once in a while, we love to do this, like we do with our buddy Todd from BECU, and help out people with financial advice. Yeah. The other big thing that people face in their life, if it's not about money, even though eventually this becomes about money, it's about your marital status and the legal ramifications. And Goldberg Jones, which is, of course, a great place. Check them out at goldbergjones.com or call them at 1-800-DIVORCE. Rick, you guys, of course, you do a lot in the world of divorce, but actually it's about the legal ramifications of matrimony, really.
You bet. There's all sorts of issues, custody issues, asset liability issues. It really affects all areas of life.
And right now we're taking calls. If anybody would love to get through and ask Rick anything, 206-421-ROCK, 800-783-ROCK, and ROCK is 7625. We're going to get right into this.
Yeah, shockingly, the lines are lit up.
Yeah, because it's big news. It's big stuff, man. Mike and Renton, you're on with Rick Jones from Goldberg Jones. Go ahead, man.
Morning, BJ, STP, Toppy.
What's up, brother?
Jones.
Hey, Mike.
How's it going? Yeah, I'm going through, I have a court case on the 18th of April dealing with child support and custody and stuff. And my ex is making these ludicrous claims saying that I should be making more money than what I'm actually making and wants my child support to reflect what she thinks I should be making. And she's also requesting that I pay child support until my daughter is 25 years old or when she finally completes college, and she wants me to pay for college. My daughter is 15, by the way, and will be 16 in April.
Yeah, so, Rick, ever since Obamacare was extended, because now both of my kids are still covered under my insurance, I wondered about the ramifications when it came to child custody and all this. So what is the story with that?
Well, regarding child support, it really hasn't been a change with the Obamacare stuff like you're talking about. But what it really does is reflect the reality of how it's always been in Washington. It's very, very common to extend support. It's called post-secondary support all the way through a college education.
So that can be done. It has been done. And again, you're kind of hopeless sometimes in that, huh?
It's actually very, very commonplace and has gotten more so in the last 10 years.
That party said that freaked me out, though. Is that how about the woman says that she thinks that he should be making this much money and he should pay her?
Yeah,
can do that?
I've heard that before, too, Rick. What's the story with that?
Well, let's explore that. Is Mike still on the line?
He sure is.
I'm still here. I work a job that's called prevailing wage. So what I do, I make the most amount in the state for what I do. And she's telling me I should be making 20% more a year than what I'm actually doing.
Mike, do you work full-time?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Then you don't really have an issue. She's got a wish list, and it's scary to hear that wish list. But as long as you're working full-time and getting paid full-time to do it, there's really not going to be any court that's going to impose a higher standard on you.
I appreciate the call, Mike. Thanks, man. I do have to run and make sure we get other calls. But very quickly, Rick, what if he wasn't working full-time?
Then it's a little bit of a different story. The court will at least make an inquiry as to whether or not he's voluntarily underemployed, which is a little bit of an issue. Obviously, the last 5 years or so, most anybody that's been unemployed has not been of a voluntary nature. But you can imagine a situation where somebody says, I'm only going to work 20 hours a week.
So if you're voluntarily unemployed, say, for instance, you just don't want to work, you're like, screw that. They're still going to try to charge you, and then you could go to jail, obviously, if you don't pay whatever they say you're supposed to.
You bet. They're likely to impute income to you, either at a historical number or an average for your age and gender. But there's actually something to it, BJ, which is when you bring a child or children onto the planet, there is an expectation that you are able to provide support to them.
And I imagine some people are thinking they could beat the system by not having a good job, so that means that their support payments and their alimony are going to be a lot lower because of that.
That's right. It's tough to beat this system.
the system will get you every time.
Yeah, and that is a tough thing, which is it's good to have guys like Rick Jones in your court because, look, there are people that made some money and then ended up only getting 50% of what they could make to get a new job because of the economy, and yet the system might say, well, hey, come on, you could be doing better. And it's like, no, I really can't.
That's right.
I'd love to be doing better, and that's unfortunately you need some support, and that's what Goldberg and Jones is all about. 1-800-DIVORCE. Let's go to it looks like Leighton rather. Leighton in Kingston, you're on with Rick Jones from Goldberg and Jones. Go ahead.
Good morning, Rick. I'm a military member that just finalized a nasty 4-year divorce in September. However, there's still a couple of things hanging out there. The order to divide my retirement pay and the order to divide my thrift savings plan. And we'll just call her the psycho ex-wife.
Is that her birth name?
She's a high conflict person. I strongly believe that she suffers from borderline personality, narcissism, some other things. Her and her lawyer have been sitting on those orders that I provided to them for several months. Yet they still bitch at me about why she hasn't received her money yet. The other question is I retire in the end of March, and due to sequestration and the Department of Defense hiring freeze and everything, job prospects for me in the Puget Sound area are nil. And so I filed my intended relocation, and I was just looking for your advice on that matter.
Sure. Well, let's dive into that one first. In terms of the intention to relocate, the Washington courts are fairly liberal in allowing a relocation when we're dealing with custody issues, just to catch everybody up on that. But they're fairly liberal in allowing a relocation as long as there's a facially valid reason for you to be doing so. And if you're departing to attain better job opportunities or higher income opportunities, that's a pretty facially valid reason.
Okay.
Well, that's good news. So, all right. And what else do you want Rick to handle on this one?
I was looking for some advice on how to go about handling my ex and her lawyer to, get the paperwork.
Dragging their feet.
Up their money.
Mm-hmm. And you're talking about the military divisions, right? The pension and the TSP?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And
they've had the orders that I drew up probably for 3 months now, and then they're not doing anything with them. They're not reviewing them, not sending any comments back, say, hey, I don't like this, I don't like that.
Sure. Well, here's what you can do, Leighton. You can note what's called a motion for presentation with the court that you've been dealing with. And by doing that, you're setting a hearing out, perhaps 2 weeks out. You're providing a notice to everybody involved, and then they have to do a response so they can play that court game, or you're more likely to get those papers back a lot quicker so that you can all avoid court. But it's your way of taking a proactive step.
And by the way, and appreciate the call, Leighton. If anybody has any questions, man, that first phone call is always free to Goldberg and Jones to find out if they can help you, if they're right for you. And so if you don't get through on the phone line today, please call 1-800-DIVORCE and, ask for Rick Jones or one of the great staff that works there. And, they'll tell you, man, okay, here's how we can help you. And, sometimes, and that's what I love about you guys, Rick, sometimes you go, you know what, in this situation, it's better for you to go this way. And so that's why if you don't get through in the phone lines, Goldberg and Jones, give them a call at 1-800-DIVORCE. You can check them out online at goldbergjones.com.
This texter sums it up great. I wish I'd called them when I went through my divorce. I trusted that so-and-so, and I got screwed. Lawyer up, boys.
Let's go to Missy in Everett. Missy, you're on the rock with Rick Jones. Go ahead.
Hi, I just recently got married, and my husband and he has a son from another previous relationship.
The Second Wives Club. Here we go. So you want
we want custody, and we've been paying child support without any problems. We haven't gone through the court system to pay the child support, but we just do it as an agreement that we had certified. But he hates it over there, and he's said multiple times that he wants to come live with us. How do you go about that?
Well, it's an extremely uphill battle that you've got in front of you. There's already a parenting plan in place.
Right.
Okay, with
not by the courts, but they kind of had a written agreement.
Okay, so there is no parenting plan, but this is what's been happening for years.
Right.
Okay.
Is it a little
He's
easier,
only
Rick,
8
if there's
years
no
old.
plan?
Not quite.
Well, it doesn't erase the history. So your next step, if you want to seek this, would be doing a motion to establish a parenting plan with the court system, assuming paternity is not at issue either. But a motion to establish a parenting plan. The problem is that the courts are going to certainly favor significantly the fact that this has been home for the child for however many years this has been going on. So you're really going to have to show a very, very high standard, even likely to be higher than just what's in the best interest of a child. You're going to have to show something akin to a modification standard, which means showing a substantial change in circumstance and existing harm to the child.
And Missy, thank you for the call. Rick, a question about that. 2 questions. Number 1, how much significance does the child's testimony and statement about where he or she wants to go, how much does that play? Oh, and does age come into play when a child gets to decide where they want to live before they're 18?
You may be surprised by this answer, BJ, which is a child's desire matters very, very little. There are occasions when there's a parenting evaluator involved where it's subjective, but the parenting evaluator may decide to talk to the child. And if they do that, they may decide to factor that into the equation. Wow. But when people ask me, what age can my child decide where they want to live? My answer to them is 18.
Wow. So even this whole, what do they call it? Sovereignty or independence? What's that thing the kids try to, emancipation? That doesn't really, That's a red herring all these years. Sorry, Steve, you're stuck with us.
Here's a text message question. Can my ex-wife force me to send our kids to private school?
To the extent that it's an ex-wife, probably not. When people get divorced, it's fairly common for a continuation of private school because that's the course of education that they'd already established. But to simply reach into the pocket and even upgrade a level of expense, very unlikely.
Oh, that's good news. Man, I thought for sure the answer was going to be yes.
I occasionally have good news.
Yeah, I hear that.
Not very often.
One texter, it's a rhetorical question, I'm sure. So tell us what exactly is the benefit of getting married, guys?
Well, and we have a little time left, so I do want to talk about that, Rick, because the benefit of getting married, I want to know what's the benefit of being legally prepared when you get married, because divorce is when people think legal, even though that marriage license is a clear indication that you're involved in a legal process. So what do you tell people to be proactive before they even say I do?
Sure. Well, number one is to understand what that means and to understand what entanglements are enveloped, I guess, in marriage really requires you to ask what happens if and when we get divorced. And nobody wants to do that because there's nothing that sounds good about I'm about to get married, so I'm going to find out what happens if we get divorced. But it's just simply a smart thing to do. And that education alone may be enough for somebody, but a lot of people go further and they do a prenuptial agreement. And while it's not required, there's a whole lot of benefit for it because it really means that two people have sat down and thought this through in good times and said, okay, if this doesn't work, we want to be civil and here's how we want to deal with things, as opposed to waiting to the point where it gets to a divorce where civility gets thrown out the door.
Boy, I think it would be great if parents could get involved in that. Boy, that would be awesome because they're the ones that are the clear-headed ones. And both parents, the bride's parents, the groom's parents, get together and help them through that process because you're right, Rick. I mean, man, we know what the divorce rate in this country is. And, of course, it's even higher when you talk about young marriages. So it seems like it makes a lot of sense. And Rick's got a lot of great info. And like I said, man, call them up. The first call is free. Find out if there's any way that Goldberg and Jones can help you. It's a great service they provide for free. Also, you can get in touch with them online at goldbergjones.com. We didn't get through a lot of calls, but you know what? We're going to have Rick back, no doubt about it, because we know that people want to know about this stuff. The number is 1-800-DIVORCE. That's 1-800-DIVORCE. Rick, you know what? Always good stuff from you, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much.
The BJ Shea Morning Experience on The Rock, 99.9 KISW.